guys, so this is Keir from strengthcoachnetwork.com, and in today's video I want to talk about a document that got passed to me, CIA shit. It got passed to me by someone who wants to remain anonymous. It's basically a breakdown of all of the salaries of strength coaches working with baseball within the SEC. And why do I want to talk about this? I want to talk about this because obviously people do not talk about money publicly, but money is obviously something that's going to affect us all as coaches. So if you're going in blind, I think it allows institutions to take a little bit more advantage of you, or it means that you're going to be more of a step behind when it comes time to do stuff like negotiations, making plans for the future, rainy days, side income, all that kind of stuff. So with that said, bear in mind that this is just SEC baseball. It's one conference, it's one sport. The SEC is obviously by far the richest conference in collegiate athletics. Certainly the biggest, richest conference in collegiate baseball. And baseball is typically going to be the third highest revenue sport in college athletics behind football and basketball. So if you work outside the SEC, expect to make less. And if you're working outside of those big three sports, football, basketball, baseball, expect to make less. Getting into the document, as you can see, I have redacted the name of the school and the job title of the guy or girl responsible for heading up baseball. I've got no desire, despite what a lot of people think to be sensationalist or draw attention, positive or negative, to a particular individual. Rather, I want to make it about the numbers, the implications for you if you're watching this as a strength coach. And my understanding is that a lot of this is publicly available information if you just dig enough into the documents that a lot of the schools are legally obliged to publish. And my guess is the three teams in this document that there is not data available for, they have chosen not to do so because they're not legally required to do so. What is included that I've not redacted in the document? The number of teams that the person responsible for baseball is tasked with working with. In certain institutions, in my experience, there's a desire to focus on a big sport, or where resources are going to permit working with just one team only. Some institutions will take that option, whereas others, they're going to give additional work of other teams to whoever heads up a big sport like that. And typically they're going to be lower level sports. Sometimes that matches up with the title. So if you have a director of insert sport, typically you're only going to be responsible for that sport. But there are instances where you can head up an entire department or be a director of a particular sport and still have additional sports that you'll be responsible for. You can also see how long they've been coaching in general and how long they've been coaching specifically where they work now. You can also see their base salary. You can see how much additional money they're making from stuff like postseason bonuses if it's included, and like fringe benefits like coaching at camps, phone allowances, and clothing allowances. Observations from the data, just general observations. First is that you need a lot of coaching experience to head up a baseball program in the SEC. So almost 13 years on average. Only 3 in this list of the data that's available have worked less than a decade. Most of that is going to be at that school, so the average tenure at these SEC programs is 9 years. What does that mean? It means that these jobs are not turning over very fast. If you aspire to work in this kind of environment, don't hold your breath. The base salary of an SEC baseball coach is $77,520. The postseason bonuses at maximum on average are going to be $8,529, but in all likelihood it's probably going to be lower because this number assumes that each individual in the list goes all the way, which is obviously a mathematical impossibility. It's definitely going to be lower than that. It's probably going to be nowhere near $8,529. If coaches are working camps, it's going to be $3,455 a year on average, but as you can see from the document, some people farm this out to their interns and assistants, and the thing that you have to remember is this is still additional work, so this is not included in the work that you're already doing. The phone allowance is $965 a year, and the clothing allowance is $657 a year, and then certain Programs have relationships with clothing brands where you can get heavily discounted clothing, typically on select lines. The maximum total pay with bonuses on average is $91,127. That is the absolute best case scenario for the average baseball strength and conditioning coach in the SEC. Without those bonuses but benefits included, it comes out on average to $82,598, which is to be expected for most coaches most of the time because not everyone can be a winner. If we're generous, we take those numbers and we assume a 50-hour work week, 48 weeks a year, which would probably be on the low side for your average high-level strength and conditioning coach, in my opinion. That averages out to anywhere from $34 to $38 an hour. Bearing in mind, after 13 years of work as a strength coach, with all of the college debt, all of the degrees, all of the internships and so on, bear that in mind when a manager of an In-N-Out burger franchise can make up to $160,000 a year after 10 years with just a high school degree and no student debt. Now, that's fine, but you do have to understand what you're going into. And if you want to make that In-N-Out burger franchise money, you are probably going to have to be doing something by yourself or picking a different sport or a different environment to work in. So, for example, the pros, especially if you're not fortunate enough to work in the third highest revenue sport in the highest revenue conference in college athletics, which is what we're talking about right now. The average maximum bonus structure is about $9,000 a year or 1 month's salary. I would say it sounds good, but you can't count on it because for most coaches, most of the time, you're not getting any of that. And you're still having to rely quite a bit on other people to get that bonus for you. So sport coaches and obviously the athletes themselves. So even if you do everything right within your particular role, you can still lose out on that bonus. And $9,000 a year, for context, is probably about 2 hours of personal training per week at $100 an hour. So bear that in mind. When it comes to the fringe benefits, in my experience, and I'm a dreadful cynic, institutions hand out fringe benefits to appear generous and to sweeten the deal a little bit. But if you look at these numbers, it's really just 1% of your yearly wage. So don't get fooled. It's nothing to the institution, and they really like to sell it when they present it to you, but it's certainly better to be paid, 10% more per year, even 2% more per year, and then buy your own phone and shoes. When it comes to camps, again, it feels like generosity. However, it's more work. So it's not just, here's a bonus. It's more work on top of what you're already doing. And there is not a strength and conditioning coach in the land that isn't already overworked. 2, you can't say no to that work anyway. So good luck with that. And 3, you're still making the institution money. You can guarantee whatever it is they're paying you to do that camp, they are making exponentially more from that by hosting that camp that you have to work at anyway. To me, real generosity would be a profit share or a cut of the revenue. When it comes to the director's title, it appears to matter a little bit in that you get about an extra 5% in yearly salary and an extra $1,000 in bonuses if you go all the way. My guess is, though, that the biggest benefit to being a director is being able to cut down on the number of teams that you have to work with. And just anecdotally looking at that document, the directors do train fewer teams. It's unwritten, but the biggest advantage to being a director is you are closer to the seat of power within your particular institution. So if your goal is to exert influence, and it should be as a director or just as a strength and conditioning coach in general, and to secure your position, that is a good position to be in. Shit rolls downhill. So if you have an assistant title, you have to train 3 or 4 teams, in my experience. 1, you're much easier to ignore, and 2, you are much easier to get rid of because the people at the top will always chop the little people first before they work the way up the tree and then finally fall on their own sword. What is surprising about this is that how long you've been at the school appears to matter way more than how long you've been coaching in general. So this was basically a strong correlation versus a moderate correlation for time spent at the school and time spent coaching in general. Wondering why that is, I don't know. Maybe it's the relationship to the head coach. It could just be a lot of, for example, state mandated annual increases in salary of 3%, for example. We had a coach on that list 29 years in their role, 1.03 to the power 29 is a whole lot of increases. It could just be that other schools pay even worse outside of the SEC, Division 2, Division 3, and so on, and that the SEC institutions know that you're willing to take a lot less to just get more than that, or to get their logo on your resume. So who knows? What is clear though is that you want to get there early and you want to stay a long time if you do want to make significant money in college baseball. Another interesting thing, there appears to be no relationship between how many teams you coach and your level of pay. So you could be a director with one team, you could be a director with 3 or 4 teams, you could be an assistant with one team or an assistant with 3 or 4 teams. You're not going to get paid any more for all of the extra work that those additional teams entail. So to me, that means either the school's just getting free money from you for the extra work that you do relative to people at other schools, or they think that those teams are of a low enough priority or workload that they can be squeezed in. And all of those things are probably true. They never say it out loud, but certainly there is a hierarchy to the importance and the regard with which teams are held within athletic departments. There is no apparent relationship between athletic department budget and how much these strength coaches are being paid. So this is based on publicly available data for the most recent year, which of course includes the pandemic, so you're welcome to take this with a pinch of salt. However, there are huge differences between the top and the bottom schools, more than double the annual operating budget from the biggest to the smallest school. However, there appears to be a much smaller difference between the highest paid baseball S&C and the lowest paid baseball S&C within the SEC conference. So it's about a 50% split. It appears that in general, schools just want to pay the minimum they can based on the going rate for that quality of coach that you can expect at that level. So as ever, the strength and conditioning job market is a buyer's market. There are more coaches than jobs, so there's always going to be that race to the bottom of who can do the job for less, even at this level, this sport, and the SEC. Take homes from this video. You can make a decent living in the SEC working with a high revenue sport like baseball, but you're not going to retire off it. You probably have a better chance of retiring rich if you go work for In-N-Out, for example. You're probably not going to be able to last a very long time if you get fired or have to take a sudden absence. If you want to get paid, it's still probably a much better idea to be a sport coach or to be an administrator. Administrator just because it's much harder to get fired. Or to work in a high revenue sport, specifically football or basketball, or you can work in a professional setting in baseball or in those other 2 sports. Now, unfortunately, the math for that just doesn't fit. Not everyone can go work in the pros, not everyone can go work in football or basketball, and ultimately a lot of people want to work in baseball in all conferences, not just the SEC. So it has to be business as usual. You have to be making financial plans from the get-go. 1, to protect yourself in the present. 2, to plan for the future. And I think 3, to maximize your income away from coaching, because away from coaching, the money tends to be a little bit easier to come by. It's not as capped in what you can earn, and it's more sustainable long-term than coaching, where you do actually tend to see a lot of burnout. So just as an aside, this is the reason why we put together the financial literacy model of the Strength Coach Network Fundamentals course. We brought in Alan Geezy. He's got several $100 million under management for some people much richer than me, over 30 years of experience as an independent financial advisor. And we're really proud of the materials that we were able to put together with him as part of the Fundamentals course. So if you want more information on that, just go over to strengthcoachnetwork.com/fundamentals. Or if you're a cheapskate, you just want the free stuff, you can go to the link below and you can sign up for one of our free email courses. It's designed to help you maximize your professional development, whatever stage of your career you're at, whether you're an intern, you're an established assistant trying to become a director, or you're already a high performance director in the college or pro sector. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you soon.